WESH 2 News starts now.
Happening now, parts of Central Florida are either under a hurricane or tropical storm warning tonight as Tropical Storm Idalia continues to strengthen. Hurricane force winds are, of course, a big concern, specifically for Marion and Sumter counties.
And regardless of where Idalia makes landfall, rain and wind will have an impact on much of the state. We have team coverage tonight. WESH 2's Liv Johnson and Haley Crumblehome have a look at last-minute preparation in the areas expected to feel Idalia the most.
We begin, though, with Chief Meteorologist Tony Manalfi and meteorologist Cam Tran in studio with the brand new 11 p.m. advisory, and not much changing, guys.
Not really, and it's actually what you've been pinpointing on, Chief. You've talked about that dry air really inhibiting this system, and that is literally one of the reasons why we have not seen this intensified to a Category 1 hurricane yet. You can see not really much has changed, Tony.
The other thing, too, speaking of not changing, we talked about the watches and the warnings, and literally the report just came down. We're going to get a second once over just to make sure, but it looks like for our viewing area, no changes to any of the
updates,
the watches, on the east side of the coast and on the west side. I'm going to show you that map here in just a second. You can see there's Idalia, wind still at 70 miles an hour. The unusual thing is, even with the hurricane hunters in there, a little surprised by that. They didn't drop the pressure this evening to 980, 981 at least, with the hurricane hunters down there and finding a pressure at least at flight level of 979 millibars. But again, the cone still showing 105-mile-an-hour winds now at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., closing in on making landfall. And notice the arc now up and then over the northern side of our viewing area in and around Marion County, and then rocketing off towards the north and the east. Model agreement has been phenomenal. Everything within the cone. Again, the greatest risk for power outages will be right here from Jacksonville, just east of Tallahassee, northern Marion County. The farther south and east you go, I think the risk will be a little bit lower. So let's take a look at the intensity forecast. Again, a few of them, Cat 3, a lot of them tonight, Cat 2, Cat 1. We'll have to wait and see what that dry air does. But, we do have an update, Cam. There it is. So they took out the hurricane watch for the center of Marion County and upgraded it to a tropical storm warning. And you can see up and down the eastern side of the peninsula here, the Weather Service here in Melbourne and Jacksonville, upgraded now from tropical storm watches to tropical storm warning. So that's a biggie right there up and down the coast. What does that mean for the coast? That means we are expecting within 24 to 36 hours, tropical storm force winds, again, right around 40 miles an hour, if not even a little bit higher. So again, that breaking there for folks along the eastern side of the peninsula. One more time, there's your track, the northwest side of our viewing area, and then up towards Georgia, and then out to sea. So again, a lot to digest. We're still going over the data. Came up literally at the top of the show, Cam. But again, the big change there, tropical storm warnings now up and down I-95.
Yeah, and we are expecting that makes sense because tropical storm winds is what we are expecting with Idalia, especially as we go into Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon. Here's a look at the peak wind potential that we are expecting with this system. You can see even folks out towards the west here, especially western Marion County and far western Sumter County, could get hurricane force winds, while most of us here in Central Florida will be dealing with more tropical storm strength winds. But still, that's still packing a punch here. I'll actually go county by county for you to see what you can expect in your neighborhoods in terms of winds and rain. Storm surge, a concern for the Gulf Coast. You can see some areas along the nature coast there could see upwards of 11-foot inundation out there. So huge concern for the Gulf Coast, not so much for our Atlantic coast. But one other thing on top of rain, wind, and storm surge is the threat for tornadoes. Because we are on the eastern side of the system, that's typically referred to as a quote-unquote dirty side, and that is where we typically see more tornado threat. Usually they're low end, but unfortunately, some of them can be rain wrapped, which makes it difficult, and also the timing makes it difficult. We could see that severe weather early in the overnight hours, Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning, so make sure you have the WESH 2 app. We will notify you if there are any severe weather threats in your neighborhood. Highest threat for tornadoes, especially as we get into Wednesday, will be mostly our far western counties along the I-4 corridor. could see a few tornadoes, but the threat a little bit on the lower side. In terms of what to expect here with Idalia, again, mostly late Tuesday into Wednesday, the biggest threats will be those wind gusts. We are also watching the medium threat for flooding and tornadoes. Beach erosion, because this is coming in off from the Gulf, not so much for our Atlantic beaches at all. Coming up in about 15 minutes, I will break down county by county for you to see what impacts that you will see in your neighborhood coming up in 15 minutes. And again, Chief Meteorologist Tony Manolfi will also go over the latest information that literally just came down seconds ago with the 11 o'clock advisory, including the new watches and warnings in effect.
All right, Kim, thank you. People in Marion County are preparing for Idalia ahead of the storm's expected arrival.
The county is under a local state of emergency. WESH 2's Liv Johnson joins us from a sandbag location in Ocala. Sumter County is the farthest west and the most likely to feel the harshest effects of Idalia in central Florida. The county declared a local state of emergency, and leaders warned to expect power outages. Lake Panosofsky Recreation Center is the county's only sandbag site. It opens at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. 2 shelters are also expected to open at 4 p.m.
If the impacts that are anticipated by the forecast actually come to fruition, people will be impacted and affected. They need to be ready. They need to be prepared.
Students will also be sent home early tomorrow, and there will be no school on Wednesday and Thursday. Lake County is gearing up for tropical storm force winds. They'll be opening shelters tomorrow afternoon and closing schools Wednesday. Tonight, WESH 2's Haley Crumblehome spoke with public safety and emergency managers.
Now, Orange County is expected to get a few inches of rain from the storm, but even though it's not expected to bring its strongest wind and rain there, people are still not taking any chances. People in Winter Garden earlier today were seen filling up bags with sand, and there were 5 different locations to do it. Now, local leaders have also been urging people to make sure their homes and properties are cleaned up to prevent flying projectiles.
We want our community to be overall safe, so we're asking people any of those types of items to put indoors, to tie it down so that it doesn't become a problem for someone else.
Orange County schools will be open Tuesday, but after-school activities may be put on hold. And in Seminole County, they've been distributing sandbags since Saturday with 10,500 sandbags handed out. Local ambulances and first responders are positioned closer to the projected landfall, ready to help out as needed. The county is not expected to open shelters, but they do have some on standby just in case. Schools and garbage collection are not expected to be impacted.
Next, a look at the preparations along the Central Florida coast.
Plus, how power companies are getting a head start to restore power as quickly as possible after the storm.
Most of Florida is under a state of emergency as we continue to track Idalia, which will reach hurricane strength overnight. Landfall is still expected along the Big Bend area of North Florida earlier in the day Wednesday. State leaders say Idalia could bring a storm surge of 8 to 12 feet along parts of the Gulf Coast of Florida, with rain and wind affecting much of the state. Some new warnings just came in, and we'll check in with Tony and Cam shortly. Everyone has a part in preparing for this storm. The utility companies are getting in place for Idalia and getting ready for whatever the storm brings.
WESH 2's Gail Pasco-Brown joins us in studio right now with what customers can expect.
Summer and Jim, we checked in with several power companies, including Florida Power and Light. FPL serves about 650,000 customers in Central Florida. Idalia is expected to be a major hurricane with widespread power outages. Florida Power and Light has started its emergency response plan by getting in position for the storm.
We have a restoration workforce that we're pre-positioning. We're mobilizing them in order for them to respond back faster for our customers. So right now we're preparing, and we're encouraging our customers to make their final preparations as well.
Now, after the storm, when it's safe to do so, thousands of line workers will be working around the clock to restore power as quickly and as safely as possible. OUC is also closely watching Idalia and urging customers to sign up for outage alerts by texting REG to this number, 69682. Now, a spokesperson for Duke Energy says its meteorologists are also closely monitoring the storm's potential impacts. Back to you both.
All right, Gail, thank you. And Governor DeSantis announced 46 counties are under the state of emergency. That includes some here in Central Florida: Flagler, Lake, Marion, Polk, Seminole, Sumter, and Volusia counties. He says they will send out resources as needed. Meanwhile, President Biden approved the state's emergency declaration today, and FEMA's National Response Coordination Center is also fully activated. Leaders in Osceola County are also tracking the storm and making sure their residents are prepared.
We are certainly hoping and praying that there will be a minimal impact, and we also encourage you once again, don't take this for granted. Make all the preparations that you need to make for this storm and do it today.
As of right now, students in the district still have school tomorrow, but after-school activities and sporting events have been canceled out of an abundance of caution.
In Volusia County, sandbags are in high demand and are being offered countywide. While Idalia is not a huge threat to Volusia, memories of flooding from Hurricane Ian are still raw. Some people have just gotten back into their homes. Others say they just want to be prepared if Idalia takes a turn.
One thing I learned today was you can put sandbags in your shower and that'll prevent backup. So maybe that'll help some people.
Beach erosion is another concern. All contractors working along the coast have to have their work sites secure by day's end Tuesday. Brevard County emergency management leaders are urging people to start preparations. For Brevard, it's less about the rain and more about the high winds. To stay informed of developments in Brevard, you can text Brevard EOC to 888-777 to get text alerts.
And tonight, as of 11:16 right now, Tony, still tropical storm Idalia, not hurricane just yet.
You know, but when you look at the verbiage from the Hurricane Center, they say an eye wall is forming. They say it's on the cusp of becoming a hurricane. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, when they do the intermediate advisory, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a hurricane. So, yeah.
It's getting better organized. We're still seeing the millibar pressures drop. So I wouldn't be surprised if the 2 o'clock or even 5 o'clock advisory get some major updates, but that we have a hurricane on our hands.
Remarkable how the early models are playing out into reality so far.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just a testament of how far we've come with, you know, our mathematical equations and trying to derive where a storm is going to go. And now we're tossing in, you know, data from airplanes, we're tossing in data from ships, we're tossing in data from hurricane hunters. It helps.
We've had several hurricane missions, the 2 actually, an Air Force one and NOAA one just flew into the system. And I think that really helped kind of gauge the update with 11 o'clock, one of the reasons why they didn't upgrade it.
And one of the things we like to do, guys, is every time we get a new update is talk about the key messages. And the key messages here with the 11 o'clock update is that, again, the story hasn't changed. This life-threatening storm surge along the Gulf Coast. Inundation there of 8 to 12 feet. Tampa Bay is under a storm surge warning. It's been a long time since they've had that, but they're in it now. We're watching the potential for heavy rain, especially in our western counties. I think the farther west you go, the greater the risk there. We're talking about tropical storm to hurricane force wind gust here throughout central Florida, depending upon where you live, and that severe weather, the threat for tornadoes is there. So Tuesday evening we'll get one burst, but the main entree, so to speak, is probably going to be from about 2 a.m. To about noontime, or maybe just a little bit after that during the morning and early afternoon hours, as Idalia is moving off and away from us by early afternoon on Wednesday. Should be a pretty fast mover. Again, if you're just joining us, hurricane warnings along the western side of the peninsula, now tropical storm warnings. Everybody has a tropical storm warning. We had the watches, of course, up and down I-95. Those have been upgraded. So let's take a look at the water vapor channel. See this little spin right here? That little spin brought in some drier air. That's what the Hurricane Center was talking about. You got that one little feature spinning there. While that was spinning, it's pulling down this drier air, and it was making it more difficult now for Idalia to really get going today. But you can clearly see what's going on. That central dense overcast right over the core of the system now is starting to wrap around. The radar's there out of Havana telling us that the eye wall is definitely trying to develop. And then once that gets going, then it's, you know, there's plenty of fuel here along this track for this storm to continue to take off and rapidly intensify over the next 24 to 36 hours. So let's take a look at Futurecast. The one thing I want to impart upon you guys, here's that first little outer band, a quick little shot. You think of the storms arriving, not necessarily the case, but it's these other bands that kind of come on in 4:30, 5:30 in the morning, bands of strong gusty winds and squalls coming on in. There's the eye. This is our in-house model. It's the only model that's this far east, but I like what it's doing with the squalls. I don't know if we're going to have the eye that close. You can see the winds up there in Marion County closing in on 80+ miles an hour. That is the outlier. I want to make that very, very clear. You take a look at the other computer models here. You can see the graph model there has got the strongest winds for Orlando, much lighter winds for the Euro and the GFS. So just food for thought there. We try to show you everything so you can kind of gauge what's going on. Again, the greatest threat for the most significant winds, western Marion County. We're talking about the potential of upwards of 75, 85, maybe even 95 mile an hour wind gusts come tomorrow late morning. Cam?
4 a.m. Wednesday to 4 p.m. Wednesday is when we'll see the worst of the impacts there in Seminole County. If you did not see your county, I will address them coming up in the 11:30 half hour. We also have it on our social media pages as well. Here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Tomorrow and Wednesday will be first warning weather days thanks to the deteriorating conditions, especially after 5 o'clock Tuesday due to Idalia with the worst of the weather on Wednesday, and then typical rainy season pattern for the rest of the week into the upcoming weekend. We'll have more news for you on the other side of the break.
WESH 2 Sports is sponsored by Mullinax Ford, Florida's largest Ford retailer. For upfront pricing and no dealer fees, shop Mullinax where car buying is simple, easy, fun. Now, WESH 2 Sports, sponsored by Mullinax Ford.
On Thursday night, all eyes will be on UCF as the Knights kick off their first season as a Power 5 member in the Big 12.
That's right. Chris Mago was at UCF today, where she's got more on the season opener between the Knights and the Kent State Golden Flashes.
UCF does not expect their travel plans to change because of the storm. However, the Florida Gators are altering theirs. The team will head to Dallas Tuesday before arriving in Utah on Wednesday as previously planned. You're watching WESH 2 News at 11. We have our meteorologist back to talk about this storm. So what are we expecting in the overnight hours? What's going to happen?
It should be upgraded to a hurricane.
Yep. It's going to get better organized. It actually is already. We're seeing the convection. Also with the NHC advisory at 11 o'clock, they mentioned that there's starting to be an eye wall form. So all signs that probably going to strengthen.
Sumter County first, is that where we should be looking at initially, or?
I would say southwest to northeast. So Polk first, and then progressively moving up through the the I-4 corridor, then up towards Lake, Sumter, and then eventually up towards Volusia and Flagler County. But when you see that loop right there, notice that burst right at the end, right over the center.
And
of that.
it's also getting
yeah. So you can see it's trying to come north now, and there's some very, very warm water there that we've been talking about. So once it begins to move even a little bit further north, because it's been sitting there creating a little bit of upwelling, it'll be over even warmer water, and that's what's going to happen. We think it's going to develop.
And the speed of this thing, is this just going to be constant, or does it at some point just rev up?
It's going to be slow, and then it's going to be like a Tesla. It's just going to take off.
Or Porsche.
or Porsche.
He drives a Tesla, so there you go.
Can you tell someone drives?
That's our report for tonight. The WESH 2 Sunrise team will kick off continuing coverage tracking Idalia starting at 4.
And we are always online at WESH.com or by using the free WESH News mobile app.
Right now, we're tracking Idalia.
WESH 2 first warning weather.
Monitoring the storm's projected path and strength, giving you their first warning to changing conditions.
For the latest on Idalia, stay with WESH 2. Download the WESH 2 app to get updates now.